Okay. 5 o'clock. I guess we'll get started. Appreciate everyone being here. We'll just get started with the Artisan Park Service Area Committee special meeting, and I guess we'll open it up to homeowner comments. Does anybody have any comments or questions regarding, I guess, the agenda? We'll try to keep it on point. Everybody's good? Okay, that's easy. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. Do I have we don't need it, that's fine. And do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So I guess before we get started, the one thing I wanted to mention is that the next APC meeting, because the first Tuesday falls on January 2nd, and Jay's going to be out of town on the 9th, which we were tentatively scheduling it for, we're going to have it Wednesday, January 10th at 6 o'clock, okay? So that'll be posted, and we'll send out emails, and et cetera, et cetera. So the first action item tonight is the first one is a motion to approve the joint resolution by and between Celebration Residential Owners Association, Board of Directors, and the Artisan Park Service Area Committee. Rand, do you want to talk to it?
The resolution is necessary because of the way the governing documents work in Celebration. The relationship between CROA and the committee is governed by what's called the Artisan Park Supplemental Agreement, and in that, certain rights were reserved to us, and CROA in certain situations could not do certain things. However, in connection with bringing on a new management company, which is a new thing that has not been done before, CROA wanted and required specific protections. In order to provide those protections, they couldn't just go in the contract. When you have a committee or a board or both, if they adopt a resolution, and in it, which this resolution does, they both acknowledge that they are adopting this in order to enter into and permit a contract, then that contract is binding. Future board, future committee, they cannot abrogate any of it. So the resolution is absolutely necessary, one, to provide CROA certain powers, and two, to make sure that the contract is fully protected and safe. And we've been over this resolution. I will again thank and commend the attorney, Tom Slayton, who did the documents. He has been scrupulously fair. He has been right down the middle. All the language is clear and unambiguous, and I, for one, couldn't be happier with the document, and it is something we must adopt in order to enter into the contract. And if anyone has questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
In a nutshell, what's it cover?
Excuse me?
What does the motion cover? When you say it requires certain rights,
yes. If I'll boil it down to one basic principle. If Evergreen does not perform as required under the contract and is given notice and fails to cure, CROA has the right to terminate them and or not let them, or I guess it would be or, not and, or not let them renew at the next renewal period. Now, that's a huge hammer. And the reason that I was commending Tom Slayton so much is the provision is drafted very well. If CROA ever gets in a position to do this, we will have pulled the house down on ourselves. We will always be in a position to cure any potential defect. And to be honest, I find that the likelihood of any of them arising to be slight, but in any event, the document is structured so that they can't appear and say, Evergreen, you're gone. There's a procedure, and that procedure gives both Evergreen and the committee time to cure that. So that's a standard termination provision, and it has to go in the resolution because it has to deal or slightly alter sections 8.4 and 8.5 of the supplemental agreement.
Well, the other part that he mentioned also, which is important, is that, basically this is binding regardless of who follows us on this committee and who follows any members of the current board, that, you can't get, other people can't get elected and go, oh, wait a minute, we want something else. So, that binds them that way.
Bill?
Brandon, you said it's unambiguous. Do you give some idea, examples of what would trigger something like that?
Yes. Let me give you one or two directly from the contract. Give me just a moment to find the right provision. I'm going to every page but the page I need. Where am I going? Oh, we'll go 1 through.
Could be maintenance, it could be...
Termination, I'm sorry. Yes. The contract sets out specific things that Evergreen's required to do, and they're things that a management company should do. There is a general overarching standard that's called the community-wide standard, and that's set forth in the documents. It includes adherence to the ARC covenants with how things look and the standard of care and landscaping, keeping up a building, maintenance, and other things. Also, for example, if they failed to comply with certain reporting requirements under Florida statutes, that could be used as a default. In that case, CROA would formally inform Evergreen and the APC that they thought there was a default. Then the cure period starts, and that period is generally 30 days. There are some exceptions if it were something that couldn't be cured reasonably in 30 days, but it's generally 30 days. So using those examples, if we weren't taking proper care of maintenance and they said that's not up to the standard, or we painted the clubhouse bright pink, which isn't in compliance with the standard, they would tell us of the default, we would have a chance to cure it, and if it were not cured, only then could they exercise the power of termination or non-renewal. So basically, if Evergreen does what a management company is supposed to do, and we are extremely confident that they will, this will never come up. Even if there is a mistake or a problem, there is the chance to fix it before this happens. So, again, this was, in a perfect world, would we prefer that CROA have zero power over us? Of course we would, but that is not the case under the governing documents. And in order to bring this company in, we agreed to this structure, and we agreed to it because we believe that we are not at material risk because of the way the provision is set up.
I do follow up. That sounds like they would have the relationship to us, Artisan Park Service Area. They, CROA, would have the same relationship that you were kind of outlining as they have with the homeowner. That is to say, the homeowner has the obligation not to paint their house pink, to keep the landscaping okay, take care of other things, otherwise they can step down and require that happens.
That is an extremely broad analogy, but yes.
Well, let me ask you this question. Suppose, and it may sound ridiculous, but just to make a point, suppose you painted the inside of the clubhouse pink.
If they viewed, and again, I am not a master of covenants, I would think, my understanding is, and again, I am speaking entirely off the top of my head, if covenants apply to the inside, which I don't think they do, then they wouldn't be allowed to take that as a violation of the community standard. They could allege it, but it would not be one. Again, anyone can allege anything, but there are the community-wide. The good news is what you have to do in Celebration is laid out chapter and verse with respect to landscaping, housing, all that stuff. So I don't think, I mean, I'm not sure if your question is if we do something crazy or if somebody tries to catch us on something, but in either case, there's always the cure period. So again, if we trip over our shoes, we have time to fix it. If someone says, I just saw a UFO, you're in violation, we have time to deal with that too. It's as good a provision as we can get. Is there a theoretical risk? Yes, but this was required in order to enter into this contract, and I believe from an operational point of view, we're in absolutely a good position.
I think the way it's written, there's reasonability here. It's not. I don't think the intent is to have the gotcha moment. I think everyone hopefully will be and act like grown-ups. And as Rand said, if there's a project or some sort of correction that needs to be made, it's going to evidently or most obviously will fall out of the 30-day time period. I mean, whether it's like a hurricane like what we just went through, I mean, there's room to work again and be reasonable. So I think the way it's written, I think that as Rand said, we're pretty comfortable with the protections in there, and that it's not going to be some little thing that trips us up, that will spell the end of the relationship or whatnot.
I'll just give you one paragraph, or one or two sentences from the joint resolution. The CROA Board of Directors agrees that it shall not terminate or refuse to renew the Evergreens Lifestyle Management contract without objective, verifiable grounds for termination or non-renewal due to a failure to cure. I will tell you, this is I don't know if I go as far as say extraordinary, this is a rare provision. You normally say X, and then you say Y. This is an absolute acknowledgement that nobody's playing games. That's very rare in a contractual relationship. It's yet another thing that makes us comfortable. So I will say we're not going to do any better than this, but having said that, I think we did great. So again, theoretical risk, yes. Practical risk, not in my opinion.
Okay, so
yes, sir.
Just a quick question. As I understand it, originally, the reason we wanted to go with Evergreen was, number one, they were less costly to us. And secondly, the management company that Crow was using to manage us was not doing the job. So my question is, we now have, hired Evergreen to take care of our place for us. But who from Crow is still going to be looking at that?
Well,
they're defects because they haven't done the job in the past X number of years.
Well, let me address two. You made two statements. The first one is not entirely correct. We didn't go with Evergreen to save money. We went with Evergreen to produce a much better long-term result. If you look at dollars spent without any potential for change, growth, benefits, it costs more on a dollar basis. I think the entire committee is enthusiastically optimistic that the benefits, both financially and in terms of operations, are going to be there. So it was not entirely, in fact, it wasn't primarily a financial decision. As to your second point, for example, one of the obligations of a manager is to maintain the property. Evergreen has a state-of-the-art web-based maintenance system. You see something, you take a picture of it, it goes on our system, it can be tracked and followed, and then there are verifiable steps in dealing with things. It's real time. But CROA, because of their property interest in the structures, and again, I would be absolutely blue skying this. Maybe this won't be forever, but CROA, because they have not dealt with Evergreen before, there will be periodic inspections by the main maintenance person for CCMC who would report any significant defect or problem. So, and your question, I think, at the end you said if they haven't done it before.
Yeah, why would we expect them to do it now?
From our point of view, I will say, we are relying entirely on Evergreen. CROA is relying on CCMC, and as with the prior provision I mentioned, this was a requirement of doing the contract. So again, are there shackles on us? No. Are there supervisory provisions? Yes.
Okay, well, I appreciate the work you guys did and the compromise. It sounds pretty.
Well, I will tell you this. The compromises, a lot of people compromised. The COLA board compromised a lot. And I've been working for almost 7 months with Steve Waring here, and we would not be in this room if he had not been entirely reasonable and looking for solutions the whole time. So this is not us cramming something down anybody's throat. This was a cooperative effort, and it's been an interesting ride, but it was a cooperative one.
Okay, I just want to say thanks.
Okay.
Second that. All right, so with that, do I have a motion to approve the joint resolution by and between Celebration Residential Owners Association, Board of Directors, and Artisan Park Service Area?
I'll motion that.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that was unanimous. All right, action item 2, motion to approve the whoops.
And we should just in case anyone doesn't know or isn't aware, now that we've motioned that, at the next meeting for CROA, they will then vote on that there. So we still need support for those that would like to go to that meeting to support.
Right, all these action items that, we're approving, I mean, they need to be approved by, the CROA board as well, which will begin at 6:30, and, looking at the agenda, these are the first 3 action items on their, agenda, so that's good news. We won't have to sit through maybe the whole meeting. If you would like, you can, but. So, all right, so now to action item 2, the motion to approve the CROA management agreement and Evergreen Lifestyle Management in the amount of $15,600 annually for the benefit of Artisan Park Service Area. And this is really the Artisan Park Service Area operating expenditure, and that's simply the $15,600 is the monthly management fee of $1,300. So, do we have any? It is what it is. You have
some eagle eye. I am deeply shamed because I looked at this contract so many times, and of course, there was something at the end. There is a provision with respect to fee increases. It was improperly stated in this contract that they may not exceed $200 per year. It should read $200 per month. Evergreen has the right over time to increase their rates, as any management company does, and this is the limitation. This change is obviously important and fair to Evergreen, and we will be noting this change to CROA before they vote on it as well. And that, by the way, they are aware of it because that was in the original terms. It was in their response to our RFP. It's my proofreading to blame. That's the only change to the contract as written.
And again, just so people are aware, in this contract where originally we had that Evergreen was going to increase by $300 a month if the restaurant was break even or return to profit, but that was taken out recently because we've already budgeted for next year a break even number. So Evergreen's going to come back after the first 60, 90 days with some sort of incentives and something that's agreeable to us. I would assume CROA and Evergreen, right? So that's going to be a work in progress once they come in. So just so people are aware of that.
And realize that any incentives, it's a matter of degree how much, but any incentive we offer will ensure that we benefit more than they do, as is always the case with a vendor. We will have to figure out what it is. They're used to doing these things. They will have a better idea of our operations at that point, and they will suggest things that, A, will help us, and if I were a businessman, I'd suggest things I think I could accomplish. If they accomplish them, more power to them. I'm happy to give them more money because they've made us even more money.
Well, just as an example, I mean, they will be fair. I'm not saying it's going to be the same ratio, but, last year we had a $60,000 subsidy. So they were saying that if they came in here, not knowing what we were going to do this year, obviously, but if they came in here and we broke even, okay, that they were going to increase their fee by $300 a month. In my eyes, that's a pretty good trade, $3,600, to bring down a $60,000 subsidy. So, again, that the reasonability, I mean, I think that, Evergreen was being very reasonable in terms of, what they would produce and what they would get in return. So I would make that trade any day, as far as I'm concerned.
I move approval of the Crow management agreement with Evergreen Lifestyles.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And action item 3, motion to approve Girard Environmental Services to perform landscape maintenance services for the Artisan Park Service Area in the amount of $55,527.89. Again, this is an Artisan Park Service Area operating expenditure. I guess the background here, as certainly Steve and Susan are aware of, that Davy, has, let's just say, not been perfect in terms of their services provided. In fact, it was substandard, I think, for quite a while. And, as a result, we went out and really looked for a firm to come in and replace them. Just so you know, that the $55,000, that number that I mentioned, that really comes out to $4,627 a month, which under the current contract with Davy is a little over $4,300. And really, it's just a question of getting somebody in there who is attentive, who will provide the services that you're contracted to do. I mean, I can't tell you, how many emails and phone calls that Bill has had to send out to Davy to try to get him out there to do different things. I mean, I have to say that since Scott, I don't know his last name, over Davy took over, things have improved. I mean, they're not quite where they should be, but there definitely is a little bit more attention being paid. And but at this point, I think it's good to have kind of the separation, if you will. I mean, this is a one-year contract with Girard, and we'll see how that goes. My understanding is that Girard was recently bought out, so again, we'll just have to see how the year goes. And my understanding is that there are two brothers, the Girard brothers. They've been contracted to stay on for a year. So my understanding is that, that they, at least for this next year, that they should be kind of remain the same, and things, ought to go reasonably well, through that buyout.
Do we know who bought them?
I can't remember the name.
Bright
Craig?
View.
Who was it?
Bright View.
Okay, thanks. Sure.
What kind of metrics do we have to monitor this landscape company?
Good question. The metrics, I think, will be more Bill, and I think, as Rand alluded to, with Evergreen Systems, I think that, Craig knows these people and has a good relationship with them, and I think and hope that they will, whether it's text or email, what have you, I think there will be, that back and forth. I don't think we have that right now. I think it's just, no real checks and balances. If, check but verify, I don't think there's really been any verification. But my feeling would be that, when Evergreen comes in here, that, as they perform work, I mean, it will be, hopefully emailed, communicated, whether it's to the maintenance people or Bill himself, what have you. But I think that we'll be able to have a better understanding of what exactly they're giving us and when they're giving it to us.
I would, in every industry today, there are umpteen metrics. I would suggest that you speak to Craig, and this is not, obviously, they've done this a lot, and see if they can design some metrics. So on an ongoing basis, our manager, Bill, can see exactly what's going on.
I think one issue with landscaping, and it may not be unique, but it is different, is when we talk about metrics, meaning did someone mow for 8 hours, did someone do this, and then do that, what we are looking for literally looking for are the results. And that will be up to Bill and Doug and Evergreen to monitor. For example, many people by the pool keep wondering why there's still grass coming out of the mulch. Then that seems like a little thing, but over time, as you look at the overall state of the landscaping, if they can work 5 minutes a day and give us perfect landscaping, more power to them. I'm not interested in the work, I'm interested in the results. And that is a visual, subjective test, and that will be performed by Evergreen. It'll probably be performed by you and me and everybody here if you don't like it. And for example, earlier this year when all the plants died out front, it's not rocket science to say that wasn't done or planted right at the right time. So going into a metrical approach to this, we will talk to Evergreen about it, but the bottom line is seeing what they produce.
I perhaps misspoke. I use metrics in I meant to use it not only in an objective way, but also, as you're saying, in a subjective way.
Well, I mean, the intent very much, particularly after the amount of time and frustration with trying to get Davies to step up, is, as you know, Celebration has the community-wide standard, et cetera. We want, and we've told you, we want this club to shine, and we're not going to settle for mediocrity. So part of that is, I hate to, boy, I'd be using the word trust in these days. Part of it is relying on your managers and relying on your committee to keep, and hopefully it won't be a situation of us keeping their foot to the fire. Hopefully it'll be saying, thank you, nice job. But if we have to, we will.
Well, one thing that will help in that regard is that they are going to have, a Girard representative, I believe, twice a week, or at least once a week, walking the ground, seeing what's going on, see if they need, any special, services to any areas, what have you, whether it's, weeds coming up, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that'll go a long way, making sure it's maintained.
Also, we have our landscape maintenance committee that they're putting that landscape plan together. And so with Girard, I would expect they'll give us, when they plant something, they're going to give us the diagrams of how they planted, what they planted, and we can have a photo taken and we can refer back to and say, this is how it looks. And a month later, if you look at that photo and you go, these flowers are dead and this is, not living, you have a very comparison there.
Excuse me, I would like to ask anyone here tonight if you saw what Girard did. We had them on a one-time contract to take care of the pavers, and I believe 16, is it, David? Those very large flower pots off of our athletic field, and they look wonderful. If you haven't taken the time to go and look, you can actually see what Girard did for us. And that was not an easy job, and I feel they did an excellent job.
They have helped Bill out, in December here. I mean, Bill didn't have the highest confidence that, he would call David and they come out to, for instance, just put the poinsettias out for, to get ready for the holiday walk. I mean, they were right there. Bill called them up. They responded. They've done other things, to try to help out and, dress up the grounds a little bit, when needed. So they've been responsive, and, it's, like I said, it's just, time right now when, maybe Davey, if you will get their act together, and we'll take a 1-year sabbatical from them, and at the end of this contract, we'll see where things are, again, whether, Evergreen has, different ideas coming in, assuming they come in next year, and, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but I think this is a good move for us right now. Andy, or George?
Jim, there's in the Girard contract, there's several line items, and one is the weekly mowing and all that, but then there's other items which make up the $55,000. Now, are those best estimates of what you're going to have to do with replanting or whatever, or are they commitments to spend that much money and no more? I mean, how does that work? I understand that the weekly maintenance generally is pretty much a fixed amount. But all those other things are seeming like there are 4 or 5 other line items, including plantings and this and that. Is that estimated or projected, or are we bound by that?
I think that's, pretty much, I think we're bound. I think that is, as they put in the contract. I mean, I'm comfortable that, in the seasonal plannings that they'll come in as things die or, the changeover or whatnot, that they'll, do it according, as they should.
We are bound, as are they. We're paying them X. Those things are laid out. They have to do those up to a good standard as set forth in the contract. If, and I'm no gardener, if something happens to those plants, they have to replace them. Now, if we ask for a redesign or new plantings, that's a la carte and should be, but their job as a landscaper is to give us a price and say, this is what it's going to look like and this is how it's going to be. So they're not going to come back and say, oh, by the way, it's $3,000 more this month because some plants died. That's on them.
And the good thing with this too is that they're the ones that as Eileen said, did the field, did the walkway there, and as we do the other stages around the clubhouse for the replantings, around the pool, the front of the club, the side, back, etc. That that's Gerard doing that, so they're going to be certainly the guarantees in terms of them planting it, maintaining it, making sure they don't die, having their representative coming in at least, once a week, walking the facility, making sure that, everything is as it should be. So I think that's pretty important that you're going to have that, that individual at least, on a weekly basis coming in and, making sure that everything is as it should be.
If this is approved, when will that go into effect?
Jan 1.
Barbara, you had a question?
Dave, met all their obligations to us?
Well, we, after, I want to say that we've been accruing about 4 months worth of monthly fees to them. I mean, it just really got to the point where kind of enough was enough, and I talked to Bill, and we didn't pay our monthly bill, and so Bill has talked to and emailed Scott over at Davie, and I assume there's going to be some back and forth, and we'll talk about it. I mean, Bill does have plenty of emails. He does have pictures. I mean, he walked the property with Scott soon after Scott took over for the other person who was in charge of Davie or running the celebration aspect of it, and even he was kind of shocked at the state that our landscaping was at that time. So what's the number going to be? I mean, roughly that's whatever $16,000, $17,000 that we're looking at. So I'm assuming that we'll have a meeting of the minds somewhere in there. I think also there was the hurricane month, if you will, kind of in there where, I mean, I don't know if they were out maybe once or certainly we weren't getting the weekly maintenance, if you will, or landscaping. So that month of whatever it was, August, September, obviously we'll talk about. But that's something we're working, in the process of doing right now. So.
Well, prior to the summer, they were supposed to come in and repair a lot of things that were not done properly. Were those taken care of?
I have to talk to Bill. I don't know. What was on that list. So, I mean, I would say, my guess is some, probably not all.
Yes.
The amount of $55,000, et cetera, is per annum, I assume, correct?
Yes.
And maybe you should put the word annually. The way you did in number 2, $15,000 annually.
Okay.
We can do that.
I've already proved I can't proofread, so.
Just real quick, we don't have to involve Crow in this at all, it's how ballgame.
Well, the contract will be with Crowa.
All our contracts are signed and entered into by Crow on our behalf. We are not an incorporated legal entity, so, as the Evergreen contract.
My question is because it's worded a little differently than number 2. I would have thought it would have motion to approve Crow management with Gerard Environmental.
Well, the contract itself isn't here yet. We are approving the use of Gerard and in effect asking CROA to contract with them.
Right, and what'll happen is, I've talked to Steve, what'll happen, again, assuming Evergreen comes in, we'll get the contract together. Tonight, CROA is just basically, going to vote to approve the proposal, and then the contract itself will be presented by Evergreen to CROA on behalf of the Artisan Park Service Area. Gerard, what did I say? You're saying Evergreen. Okay. Well, Evergreen, right, assuming Evergreen comes in, but they'll draw the contract up.
Just one more, are we pretty confident CROA's going to rubber stamp this?
I don't know the rubber stamp is the word, but we've been working with them. Our confidence is fairly high. We don't control CROA. We believe we have met and responded to their concerns and their needs. We're not the CROA board. Sandy?
Well, I've been at a CROA meeting, I guess, when all this started, because some members of CROA were there. And one of the persons said that CROA is not very happy about this, and that any time CROA is responsible for our expenditures, because they are such a large organization, they get a discount. And that the fact that we are leaving CROA CMC is going to affect how we spend money, because that discount will not be available to us.
Ironically, it is probably going to be the opposite. For example, our landscaping fee is our landscaping fee. We don't get a discount because Gerard does some of the rest of Celebration. Our hope, and it is a hope, is that Evergreen runs a variety of food service operations in the near area. It is always better to have group buying power and group leverage. I'd even go back, we didn't mention it with respect to Gerard. Gerard does a great deal of work for Evergreen. They don't want, they have a very strong incentive to perform well for us. And similarly, as we look for vendors and users, we feel we will be able to do as well or better. Now remember, the real costs, when you think of costs, are your monthly fee, and we've already stated we're paying a greater fee than we paid to CROA over the years. We believe we're going to get substantially more, and we believe that fee is going to pay off both financially and otherwise. But the other cost is the load factors on the employees. And now, both the CCMC contract with CROA and our contract will be, if somebody makes $100, there's a 30% load, there's a $30 load on that for full-time, and there's a $22 load on that for part-time. What that means is, when you run, if you're a management company, you have to do things like pay FICA and administer payroll, and in certain cases, the managers pay some or all of their insurance. It's the costs of maintaining and managing an employee, both the financial and operational costs. And most companies in this, if not all, maybe Steve could speak to this, they all, as you go per employee, and you put, it's called a load factor, it's percentage. And those load factors were much higher under the old CCMC contract. They've come down, and ours are down too. So again, I don't believe there is an area in which we are going to suffer financially from not being in lockstep with CROA with respect to CCMC. Because remember, we hire the HVAC people, we hire the pool people. Yes, the contract is written between CROA and that contractor, but we decide who does all those various things, just as we are deciding on Gerard tonight. We control our financial destiny.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the Gerard Environmental Services to perform landscape maintenance services for the Artisan Park Service Area in the amount of $55,527.89 annually for the Artisan Park Service Area operating expenditure?
I make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Many of you have been with us throughout this year, And we thank you, we cannot thank you enough for your support. Hopefully, things go well for the rest of the night, and we will see where we go from here, but your committee's pretty excited.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, got a couple?
You know, we sit out here and except for these people sitting up here, we really owe them huge thanks. They have been meticulous in their research. They've been reasonable. They hopefully brought this to a conclusion which all of our store never do. So we really owe you as a group that a thank.
Thank you, thank you. Appreciate it. Steve?
The point you made about the amount of increase per year, you said it wasn't correct in the agreement. Is there any action you can take to that?
We did. I amended the motion before, and we're going to advise CROA of the necessary change in the contract before they approve it. So we're fine. I move we adjourn.
No, you have one more.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Sonia?
People to sign
Sign in. Or sign in or out at this point.
a lot of people came in and didn't sign it.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll do adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Turn the camera off before we do anything embarrassing. It's never bothered me. Because I've never